let's talk about, at least for myself, and I think for many other people, in my past, I spent a lot of time trying to be resistant to anything that was uncomfortable. I was going to avoid it, or I was going to, I felt, work above it or work through it or somehow dance around it, but not really have to deal with it. Share a little bit how being resistant to these feelings of discomfort in many cases actually just keeps us stuck in grief.
It's a great question. Carl Jung said, "What we resist persists and often grows stronger." And Deepak Chopra says people think the shadow is the opposite of love, but actually it is the way to love. And the shadow is our
Mhm.
dark feelings that we don't want to acknowledge because we fear that they're bad. Because, I've studied and researched, I have background in child development, my second degree is in early childhood education. I've been extremely curious about raising healthy children, and I've been a parent educator. My daughter and I are doing some parent education programs now. She has two young children, and I feel like it's really important for us to look at these old parenting belief systems that said, spare the rod, spoil the child, beat the devil out of a child before they're old, and break the will before they're old enough to remember. Um, don't be angry. Feelings are bad. This was the belief system of the majority of families until the mid 20th century when we started researching what children need for optimal development. And we realized, wow, we've been doing this wrong for a long time. And now we also know that we possibly, research is showing, we could be carrying 14 generations of ancestral trauma in our DNA. So my first book, Living in the Shadow of the Too Good Mother Archetype, was in my doctoral dissertation where I was talking to women about, what it means to be a good enough mother. And no one could say they've ever felt good enough. And so I thought, well, this is because what's gone into the shadow is this inability to express our feelings and our inability to tolerate uncomfortable feelings because we've been talked out of them. So if we have a child having a temper tantrum, and the old school said beat the child, and then the new research is telling parents don't beat the child, and parents are trying to figure out what to do, and they tend to swing back and forth to, spanking to permissiveness to, and so it's really about, we don't know how to tolerate the discomfort. So when a child's having a temper tantrum, we have to be able to tolerate our own discomfort and guide our children through their discomfort. But we've sort of tried to take away the discomfort in the, after we learned how were supposed to parent. But it really is about, all feelings are okay, but all behavior isn't. And that's one of my favorite lines. My clients hear me say it all the time. So how do we allow ourselves to give ourselves permission to feel all the feelings, anger, jealousy, just, hatred, even, I was raised don't hate, but it's a strong word. But there's all kinds of feelings. I say to my clients, what are you feeling? And they say, oh, I'm mad or I'm frustrated. And Brene Brown did some research on, people and what the typical feelings they have. And she said there were mainly three, and they were happy, sad, and pissed. But there's so many more feelings. So I have a feeling word sheet that I work with when I help clients excavate what they're feeling. And we get to other words like dismissed, unlovable, betrayed, violated, all kinds of feelings that we feel, but we don't know what to do with them because we don't have a narrative for that yet. And that's what we're trying to do, is write a new story, create a new narrative for how we can know that all feelings are okay, and then find healthy outlets so that we don't act them out, which is
Mhm.
what we're seeing with a lot of the behavior with people having feelings, and we're acting out in various ways because we're in fear, and we don't know what we're feeling, and we don't know what to do with those feelings. So we get angry or we get depressed, or and we yeah. So that's a
Mhm.
really, really good question, and it's a big part of my work, is helping people really excavate, what is it I'm feeling, and it's okay to feel that, and then where's a healthy outlet for that, where's the container, where's the safe way to explore and express and transform that into grace, you know
Right. Well, partially because I think it's important that everybody hear it again, because in case you missed it, share that quote again. because I think that's important for everybody to think about. It's one of those quotes to where you almost want to say to everybody, say this to yourself 3 times.
What we resist persists and often
Yes.
grows stronger. That one? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think if it's one of those, I mean, as you say it and you say it, and each time I think you get a little bit more meaning out of it and go, wow, that's right.
And it's my theory, Alan. I haven't done research on it. There may be some, but I haven't found any and I can't really back it up. But it's my theory, my own personal theory about the reason we have such an increase in teen suicide and depression is because teens are being talked out of their feelings. And if they could find what I call enlightened witnesses or people to listen and validate and move into a place of empathy, they can get through that. But what do we do as parents and teachers, and sometimes even counselors and therapists? Okay, well, what are we going to do? How can you make this better? What can you do to make this feel better? Can maybe if you need to exercise, maybe you need to routine in your life. You see, we just have this kind of pattern of trying to fix things instead of being with and allowing, the individual to move through.
I think it's a great point. And sometimes, and as a guy, I think I've had to learn it maybe a little more so than most. Sometimes people just want to be heard.
Exactly. All the time, not sometimes. I think
Yeah,
that's something that's all the time.
you're right. You're
It's an
right.
inborn
Yeah.
need to be
Yeah.
seen and to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and again, the key word that I was trying to use in there was just. So yes, I agree. We always want to be heard, but sometimes we just want to be heard. In other words, we don't need you to fix me right now. I just want to be heard. So yes, I couldn't agree more. Now, some of the things, and you touch on it in the book, that has to do with kind of the similarity of fear and grief as it relates to our nervous system and the way our nervous system responds. So how can we look at that from the standpoint, and again, for me, especially as a male, looking at it and saying, do I not allow myself to feel grief because of this fear of showing that I'm afraid? That we have such a fear of when I can't show them that I'm afraid. And so because of that, is that also affecting, because we know that it feels the same for grief? So talk a little bit about, first of all, the fact that they are similar responses and maybe what we can do to not stop doing one because of our fear of the other.
Right. The way they're similar, it's very much like a trauma response. Well, it is a trauma response, obviously.
Yeah.
Fear is what happens when we're in trauma. And what happens is our reptilian brain, which is the primitive brain in the back in our brainstem, which was the original part of our brain that was developed for survival. And so to run from the saber-toothed tiger when there was danger,
Okay.
there wasn't any higher functioning that we have developed this, incredible brain through evolution, but we don't use it when we're in fear and grief. Our reptilian brain takes over and thinks we're in danger. And so we go into all kinds of either fight, flight, or freeze responses. And they're not conscious. And we can, and our frontal lobe, which is our reasoning that kind of integrates all the parts of the brain together and helps us create healthy choices and rational decisions, is completely offline. So we're in this fear response and we think we're in danger. And so when we lose, something, there's a fear of, oh my God, well, I don't know what's going to happen. How can I live without this person or this job? Or, it's fear. We have all kinds of fear that we're all in right now, similar to, if I lose this person or this job, and also my relationships, how am I going to do relationships in this social distancing? So we have to get our frontal lobes back online, basically. And we have to also acknowledge the feelings, because then it also goes into our nervous system response. So we know now with polyvagal theory, which is the largest cranial nerve that comes from the brainstem, that's why we have, digestive issues and our, heart palpitations, because this nerve is all encompassing in our body. And so we feel the fear, and it can actually make us physically ill. I mean, it has a lot to do with our immune system. So once we realize all that, then we exhale. We go, oh, okay. How do I find a sense of emotional safety right now in this moment? Hopefully, get that frontal lobe back online, and then I can really work with my grief and my fear a little bit more rationally. But I mean, it's not easy to get that frontal lobe back online, and we have to realize once we realize though that's what happens in the neurobiology. It kind of demystifies what's going on a little bit, but it takes time. It takes a lot of practice.
Well, many of our listeners are parents. We also have a lot of teachers and just caregivers in general. Um, what should a person say or not say to people who are at that moment going through uh, some sort of deep level of grief or just grieving in general? Uh, and I know, again, there's so many different possibilities in regards to what type of, grief and such, but what would you say to them, now as the person that it might be the only caregiver that's around them now with everybody being quarantined and things like that? They may only be getting this information from one person.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell them?
Well, it goes back to what you said is we all need to be heard. So how do you validate? And this again is the hard part when you were saying, this whole fix it mentality. And I work a lot with reflective listening with my clients, and particularly couples, reflecting back. So someone says, oh, I'm just having such a bad day. This is so awful. So and so, la la la, and you just repeat that back. Oh my gosh, you're having a really hard day. So and so, la la la. Whatever you say what the person said, and that person feels heard.